Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this episode, what I want to talk about is where you from? Now, depending on where you are, depending on what you're doing, sometimes depending on what you're wearing, you can be asked that question. But the question has a dual meaning. And you have to be careful about asking that question to someone. And you also have to be careful about how you answer that question. Because depending on where you are, depending on what you're wearing, depending on what you're doing, the answer to that question could have some extreme consequences. It just depends, right? Case in point. It really depends on how you ask that question. And the reason why I say that is because there's a difference between saying, where you from? And saying, where you from? You notice the slight difference? One was an inquiry as to where you live or where you're from, and you're being very inquisitive, if you will, right? The other one was a little bit more aggressive and very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very strong, very bold, if you will. And it requires a bold answer and a bold response. The other day, I'll give you an example. I went to the store and I was at like the grocery store, right? So I'm at the grocery store, and when I went to the grocery store, I specifically put on a hoodie, and the hoodie that I had on said South Carolina State University. Well, now, if you know me or you've been listening to this podcast, you know that that's where I went to school. South Carolina State University is a historically black college and university. It's located in Orangeburg, South Carolina. And so that's very common for people to wear their school hoodie, you know, when it gets chilly or cold or whatever the case may be. So it happens, right? And I'm in Atlanta, so you just never know who you're going to run into. And there's been times where I've had a SC State shirt or hoodie or hat on, and I've run into fellow alums, people that I didn't even know. And I mean, like, it's such a small world. And then we have a huge alumni base here in Metro Atlanta anyway. So it's very, very possible and very plausible that, you know, you don't have to go but so far to run into an alum, right? But on this particular day, I had the hoodie on, and a man approached me, and he said, "Oh, you went to SC State?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "What do you know about it?" Because like that's like sometimes that's my comeback question, like, because some people will see the S and they may assume South Carolina, and South Carolina State and the University of South Carolina are two different schools. Located about 30 miles apart, but two different schools, two different worlds, Jack. I mean, it ain't even close, right? So I said, well, what do you know about that? He was like, well, I know someone that went to South Carolina State. You know, one of my best friends went there. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what's up. And we got to talking or whatever like that. And he was, telling me about his friend or whatever. And he mentioned that his friend was from Columbia. Columbia, South Carolina, which is, like I said, about 30 miles from the school. That's where the University of South Carolina is located, right? And so his next question was, no, he said, are you from here? And I said, no, not originally. I said, I've been here since I graduated in 97. And so his next question was, where you from? And I told him, I'm from Florence, South Carolina. That's where I'm from. That's where I went to school. That's where my mama house at. Even though I've lived in Atlanta longer than I've lived anywhere else. Atlanta's home, but I'm from Florence. But I told him where I was from. And he was like, oh, do you know? No, he said, what high school did you go to? I told him I went to Wilson. And he said, oh, do you know blah, blah, blah? And I was like, nah. And this guy, he was a couple of years older than me, right? So he named the person. He's like, do you know? And I was like, that name sounds familiar, but I don't know him. I was like, I graduated, in 91. He's like, oh, well, they would have graduated in 87 or whatever the year was. He said 86, something like that. And so I was like, well, maybe they know my cousin. And I told him my cousin's name. He's like, okay, I'll ask him. And so that was that. But again, I said all that to say this. How you answer that question or how you're asked that question really could depend on where you are, one, what you're wearing, two, and, your answer could vary. And it also depends on who seeks the answer to that question. There's a segment of society, right, that will ask you that question. Where you from? And if you don't answer the question correctly, or you don't tell them where you're from, it could be a problem. Now, I'll be the first to admit, like, I'm not in a gang and never been associated with gangs. I got respect for gangs. But there's certain things that you can do and certain places that you can go that if you're asked that question, where I'm from, and you don't give the right answer, it could be consequences, right? Now, vibe with me on this. If you're approached by someone who may be in a gang, and I say may, you may be asked the question, where you from? And then your answer has to be something that they can either affiliate with or not affiliate with. And then they'll make the determination as to what goes from that particular conversation. It might be cool. They might just let you just slide if you say the right answer. But if you say the wrong answer, it could result in fisticuffs. Or it could result in something more than fisticuffs. Who knows? But more often than not, from what I've seen and what I've been told and what I heard, they really ain't gonna bother somebody who ain't, about that life, if you will, right? But you can be asked the question, so where you from? And again, you better give the correct answer. I looked it up on Urban Dictionary. It says it's a question that has a right and wrong answer. A gang member can ask you where you from, and the wrong answer could get you hurt. Now that's from the Urban Dictionary. So there's a couple of different ways that can go. But it all depends again on who's asking. It depends on where you are, and it could really depend on what you're wearing when someone can ask you where you're from. So I said all that to say this. I got a story. So last summer, right? Where was I? I was somewhere downtown. I think I was at Centennial Park. It's in the middle of downtown Atlanta, right? And I can't remember what I was doing down there, but I was walking around or whatever like that. And it was a nice day. It wasn't too hot. I do remember that. And I had on a white shirt with black letters, had some, shorts, khaki shorts. No, I had camouflage shorts on and some Jordans, right? And I had on a hat. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing this fitted Yankee hat that I wear a lot when I go places. And honestly, I wear my Yankee hat a lot or Yankee hats, because I have different hats, because that's my favorite baseball team, right? There's no other, knocking stuff down. There's no other reason why I wear a Yankees hat. However, I am very familiar with the fact that particularly when I travel outside of my city, I'm very cautious about where I wear my hat. Like, I'll give you an example. Like last summer, I went to Houston. Well, if you follow baseball, Yankees fans and the Houston Astros, they don't get along, not like they're going to come and fight or something like that. But I didn't get a chance I just missed the Yankees while I was in Houston. So I didn't get a chance to see the Yankees play in Houston's baseball stadium, which I would have gone to the game, right? But, fans sometimes can be a little obnoxious when you're in their city and you're wearing something other than their team colors. I remember years ago, probably about 11, probably about 12 years ago, I was in Minneapolis, and I was working in Minneapolis and flying back to Atlanta. And I was in Minneapolis, and I was in the airport, and I had on my Yankees hat. And a middle-aged white guy walked up to me, and he said, "You got the wrong hat on." And I said, "No, I have on the hat of champions. You don't know about this." And we both kind of chuckled or whatever like that, because that was my natural response. He didn't mean me any malice or anything like that. He was just cracking a joke because he saw my Yankees hat on, and he knew that, his Minnesota Twins and my New York Yankees don't like each other either. So all good. In fact, I even went to a Yankees Twins game. Target Field's beautiful place, right? This Target Field had just opened. But anyway, back to my story. I wear my hat wherever I go most of the time. And sometimes I'll switch it up with the colors or whatever like that. But I am very aware that you cannot wear this hat everywhere, because I may see it as a Yankees hat, but if I take this Yankees hat and put myself in, let's say, Seattle or Los Angeles, I could be saying, "Hey, I'm with these guys, and I'm not with these guys. I ain't got no problem with these guys. I'm cool with these guys, or I like these guys, or I don't know these guys." But you may assume because I have a hat on that that's what I'm doing. So I never wanted to be someplace and somebody run up on me and say, "Hey man, where you from?" based on what I got on. You know what I'm saying? So case in point again, like when I went to LA last year, like year before last, I hit up the homie Baylor. Shout out to BTG. I hit Baylor up and I was like, can I wear my hat out there? and he said, he told me like you could. And I was like, but his answer, like, I can't remember what he said verbatim, but I was like, you know what? Nah, I'm not gonna wear it. So I didn't take my Yankees hat. I was like, I could wear a Dodgers hat, but I was like, I ain't that pressed to have a hat on, so it's all good. Anyway, long story short, you have to be mindful about stuff like that because people can't ask you where you're from. And so I'm downtown. I'm in Olympic Park, Centennial Olympic Park, walking around. And again, I got on this Yankees hat. So this tall black guy walks up to me. We make eye contact. And then, here's another thing. In the South, when you make eye contact with people, particularly if you're brothers, it's either a head nod or what's up, like that. It's not like it is up north. Up north, you go to New York City and you make eye contact with some dude and you say, "What's up?" He's going to be like, "What you mean, what's up?" Again, where I'm from, you got to understand, you got to play by the rules where you at. So anyway, I'm standing there and I think I was getting some ice cream or something. I can't remember. I'm still trying to figure out what I was doing at the park. But anyway, I was getting some ice cream or something. I was standing in line. And so this guy comes up, tall black guy. He's like, He's looking at me. So we make eye contact. I give him the what's up. He gives me the what's up. And then he's just standing there kind of just looking at me. And we're almost like, at first he was, because he was facing me, and then he walked behind me. And, we said, well, what's ups? And he's standing behind me. And then so he walks back in front of me, and he's standing to the side of me where we're face to face, which is odd because the line is going this way. Why are you looking at me going that way? Right? So I look at him, he looks at me, and he was like, so so where you from? Excuse me? And the reason why I say excuse me, because I didn't know why he would be asking me where I was from. Because I'm in Atlanta. I got on it's hot. It's the summertime. I got on a hat. I got on shades. $10 shades, by the way. I love cheap shades. I'll never pay more than $20 for some shades, because I always lose shades, but that's another story for another day. So he's looking at me real goofy. And I'm like, why are you looking at me, dude? Like, he's literally looking at me. So we're looking at each other, and he was like, so where you from? I was like, excuse me? And he was like, where you from? And so I kind of stepped back, and I'm like, what you mean? I don't understand. And I literally said it, like, I don't understand, because I don't know. I had nothing other than, and I forgot at that particular time, I'll be honest. I actually had forgotten that I had the hat on. So I don't know that he's looking at my hat, because there's nothing on me. There's no Atlanta Hawks stuff. There's nothing. There's no South Carolina State stuff. There's nothing on me that says that I'm from someplace other, in my mind. There's nothing on me that says I'm from any other place than what I'm representing. And so, again, I'm standing there trying to get my ice cream, right? And so I said, what do you mean? He was like, oh, I'm sorry. He's like, man, like, what borough are you from? What? I really had to pause for a second, because I didn't know where that question came from. What made you think that I'm from a particular borough? I just have on a Yankees hat. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. But in his mind, because I had on a Yankees hat, he said, so where you from? Now that was different from, so where you from? So I'll be honest with y'all. Like, I was so taken aback from that question that I literally and figuratively started laughing in his face. Because, like, and again, at this particular time, I don't remember that I have a Yankees hat on. So when he says, what borough are you from? I'm like, I just start laughing. I'm like, borough? And I literally said, like, borough? He's like, New York, you got the hat on, you New York. And this is the first time, and hopefully the last time, that I've ever put on that hat and somebody assumed that I was from, because there's nothing. I mean, here's the thing. I've always said, like, you can spot a New Yorker from a mile away, right? You probably can spot an ATLian. At least I can, because, I mean, I've been here for a while. I've been here 25 years. I can spot an ATLian from a mile away without them saying anything, because obviously once you start talking, I know once you start talking, I can actually tell what side of Atlanta you're from, right? But this dude is like, what borough are you from? I ain't from no borough. I mean, it'd be different if I had on Tim's and, a bubble vest. Oh man, it would be different if I had that on, but I didn't. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like again, a white t-shirt, shorts, Jordans, and a hat and shades. That's not necessarily your New York startup kit, if you will. And I didn't have any gold chains on or anything like that. And so I kind of chuckled in his face and I was like, nah, man, I'm not from New York. I'm a Yankees fan. He's like, oh, my bad, man. You know, I thought, you know, and once he started talking, I realized he's from New York. He's like, yo, my bad, man. I thought, you know, when I saw your hat that you was from, you know, you was from up top. Do I look like I'm from up top? What the hell is up top anyway? I mean, I know what it is, but really, and I looking back on it, I didn't mean to try to make him look like a fool, but he really did look like a fool, a damn fool at that. So I said all that to say this. I mean, like, be careful about asking people where they're from. I was, you know, really kind of put off by it because I'm like, I would never run up on somebody with a Houston Astros hat and be like, yeah, where you from? What part of Houston you from? I don't know that you could be from West Bumblehell. I don't know. You literally could be from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania and have on a Houston Astros hat. Or you can have on a San Francisco Giants jersey. I don't necessarily associate people with their favorite teams being from that particular metropolitan area. Because fans, especially nowadays, fans are everywhere. And I grew up in an era where, you know, in my childhood, there was no league pass, there was no Sunday ticket, there was no means to watch any, you know, your favorite teams outside of your region. And I grew up in South Carolina, and this was before the Carolina Panthers came or the Charlotte Bobcats came. So there were no Carolina teams. So you either watched what they put on TV, which was the Cowboys, Raiders, the team from Washington, and that was about it. And Steelers. That's it. I mean, I was a Giants fan, so Giants didn't get a lot of airplay down south. But yeah, I mean, a word to the wise: don't ask people where they're from. I mean, unless it's in like the scenario that I mentioned earlier. You know, we had a conversation, so we were talking before he asked me where I was from, and it was in a very non-threatening way. But if you run up on somebody in the street and you ask them where they're from and you ain't from the street, it could be consequences. And not that, I mean, because I'm not a street guy. Y'all know that. I'm not a street dude. And I wasn't gonna smack him. I slapped him with laughter. That's about it. Because he was corny as hell. But I would never run up, even if I was in New York, I wouldn't run up on a Mets fan and be like, yo, what borough are you from? I mean, who does that? It's really proof that there's some corny ass people in this world. And unfortunately, on that day, I ran into one. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Remember, this podcast drops every Thursday night at midnight, and be sure to subscribe because from time to time we will drop bonus episodes on Sundays. Again, that's going to do it for me. I'm your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.